What's good? It's your boy, the Black Anglo-Saxon, and we are back again from the hood to the hill. And today I got a bone to pick, not with y'all, but with the rest of society. And because it's this constant rebuttal that people continue to have when I bring up certain topics. And I find it very disingenuous because for all of the time that I've been alive, people love to say, we can walk and chew bubblegum. And yet I have don't see any evidence of this being able to be done. Because from where I stand, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, a lot of the issues and a lot of the problems that we face are continuing to spiral because everybody insists on continuing to go down the path of least resistance and the path of let's party and bullshit. Because for the last week, I've had to listen to people talk about Meg the Stallion and Clay Thomas and all of the bread and circus sports games that are going on. For what it's worth, again, enjoy yourselves. And that's why in this episode today, I'm going to talk about, I'm pretty sure y'all have heard about the civil rights decision that went down in the Supreme Court, and a lot of people are upset. A lot of people are talking about how they feel about it as it relates to our rights being rolled back. And even though it is disturbing, even though it is a, very deplorable thing that's happening and taking place, this is something that I also feel in this moment, in that we as a nation have to understand that this was one of those doors that was open. And I say that because, see, everybody thought that they were exempt from being treated like a nigger. And now, because the nigger is attached to the democracy itself in the way that it was never built on democracy, it was built on oligarchy, because from jump, it was about wealth. It was about the calcification of it, not protecting Negroes and kicking the can down the road and continuing to engage in bread and circus. We are here. And so for me, my grievance flows in very two different directions, because when I'm trying to have these conversations, everybody wants to tell me, oh, well, people are trying to cope. People are trying to find their way. People are trying to grieve what's happening right now. And though that may be true, I need the adults to be adults. I need people to understand what time and moment this is. That in this restructuring, these institutions are in a cocoon stage because they're having to and trying to figure out how to pivot and move next in this upcoming order, right? And for the life of me, people insist on doing things the exact way that they have been done, as if doing those things are not the things that led us to be in this exact predicament that they are complaining about, that they are grieving about. So instead of crying about your room being cleaned up, you insist on just complaining about it and not cleaning your room, but also adding to the filth by bringing in more clothes, more food, more debauchery, more everything. But I just want to pull this article up because it's pretty damning in terms of where we are right now. It says what this ruling is about. At face value, Louisiana uh, versus Calais focuses narrowly on Louisiana's congressional maps. Lawmakers abiding by existing law have drafted maps that included two majority black districts. A group of white voters sued, arguing that drawing maps specifically based on race was unlawful discrimination under the Constitution. The Supreme Court majority agreed with them. What did it mean for voting rights protections? For decades, it means that the voting rights protections, Section 2, has acted as a central shield for minority voters in largely southern states that have relentlessly resisted granting them equal political influence. Until Wednesday's ruling, the law could be invoked to block maps that have had effect depriving Black voters of proportionate electoral power. Now that protection has been stripped. According to Pew Research, 83% of Black voters favor the Democratic Party across the U.S., a proportion that is even higher in the South. I want to jump down to the long-term implications. The Voting Rights Act emerged from the struggles of the civil rights movement as a means of combating the virulent racial discrimination that festered under Southern Jim Crow laws. The statute sought to fulfill the promise of the 15th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that granted freed enslaved people the right to vote until the Voting Rights Act was enacted. The amendment was stymied by a slew of legislative tricks that disenfranchised African Americans from literacy tests to poll taxes. It is unlikely that the country will return to the most extreme forms of discrimination that proliferated those dark days. But as Kagan put it in her dissent, the Voting Rights Act is now all but dead, leaving Black and other minority voters exposed. They're once again at the whim of the Republican leaders. Which is, and this is the name of what it is. I have a video up talking about cracking and packing. I did a gerrymandering video, but y'all can go check that out because I'm not talking about that specifically right now. What I want to touch on is how people are addressing this and talking about the fact that the Congressional Black Caucus seats are in danger, in harm's way, and they're talking about how the Black and brown, however you want to frame the coalitions, are in very, very dire straits. Now, both of these things are true, but I need people to understand that we have put ourselves in this position. One, by not taking claim to the very atrocities that we have suffered through. And what do I mean by that? The Congressional Black Caucus has acquiesced to the last three Democratic administrations, the Biden one and the two Obama administrations, and they have literally, rhetorically given our social capital away by allowing things like Juan Crow and all of these different things to take place and allowing the right to circumvent what the Civil Rights Act was built on. And I say that because, for example, when you say and make the argument that Jim Crow and slavery is the same thing that's happening to immigrants right now with ICE, you muddy the water so much that you negate that legislation. When you say we are all equal, when you say that we can pull ourselves up by the bootstraps because there is no racism anymore and that everybody has equal access, you kill that argument and you kill the need for protections. Because on one hand, you're arguing that, oh, well, we're in this environment and the only time y'all call out racism is when it's Donald Trump. But in every other case, we're all the same. Let's be peaceful. And the only people who you're willing to critique and step on are those people who look like you because they don't have power. So when you do that, the very people who you need right now to be able to power you through to get you through this moment while your seats are being attacked also have been deleveraged based on your acquiescence and affiliations with all of these organizations and people who do not have the best interests of the people in which you serve. On top of that, we create fanfare after fanfare after fanfare after fanfare about issues that don't matter, about topics that don't matter. And we have politicians, we have influencers who push these conversations in the name and the sake of money, not understanding that attention, time, energy are finite resources. So the very people who you have distracted to take advantage of are now distracted and cannot help you. The very people who you've deleveraged to take advantage of have been deleveraged to such an extent that now, when we get Supreme Court rulings, or let's take a step down even further to Congress and the Senate and the House, you all are obsolete because we have played a game that feeds into the state having complete control over all of the infrastructure. We talk about fascism, but a lot of people do not understand that fascism is a merger of the state and the corporate body. And until we recognize that and until we understand that, you will understand that fascism has been here long before Donald Trump. Because essentially, the way that you all have moved has positioned you and your people in which you serve, your constituency, to be not only at odds with you, but they don't have the power to even help and support you in the moment in which you need them. And then we have people who are talking about the Meg and Clay and all of these different things that are going on right now. Meanwhile, the Voting Rights Act is being cut because it already has been gutted from a lot of the other different cases that have come before this. But because people want to walk and chew bubblegum or think they are walking and chewing bubblegum, this is what we have. There is not time, there is no real time to say, we want to do this, we want to do that. All of those things, the party and the bullshit, that's luxury. That's a luxury. Because while you're doing that, there are people who are working overtime to not only mitigate the progress, but also put in stopgaps for anything that you might think of in the future. So I only wanted to say that because it's a lot of conversation around tomfoolery. And for those who want to say that, oh, that's just an online thing, the numbers are starting to catch up to the tomfoolery that has been existing. The tomfoolery, the incentive structures around relationship and dating is creating such an environment that we find ourselves with low birth rates that has incentivized capital to bring in an immigrant population to replace the deficit, but also to extract and manipulate the wages so that we don't have to have a conversation around the real reasons as to why you can't get 50-50, because you might be at 30-30, 20-20 right now based on the current economy and ecosystem. Because working 2 and 3, 4 jobs ain't cutting it for most people. So even putting two people together, you still might not be cutting it. But we talking about that, not understanding that 90% of people are in the same trenches with each other, male and female. But then on Monday, you want to have a conversation about Meg and Clay, but then on Wednesday, you want to pivot and then be over here. And I need people to stop supporting people who continue to pivot for the sake of money, because that's how we losing. You got people who should not even be talking about certain discussions, but they do because the incentive structure. And I have to bring that up because that is the through line in all of this. What do y'all think about this Supreme Court decision? Do y'all think it's just another thing that, is taking place? It is what it is. May the odds ever be in our favor. You're gonna find you're gonna find another way. Or do you feel like it's the nail in the coffin? And I would say for everybody else who ain't Negroes, welcome to niggerdom. Because the protections were there, even though you didn't necessarily think that they were for you, because it was about us and it came through us. The through line of the democracy is through Negroes. So now here we are. But like the video, share the video, leave a comment if you're still here.